We are baking, the POPers. You're all gonna be here learning how to make a French sponge cake or maybe getting some tips on some other things. There we go. The POP Baking Club is started at 6 p.m. We've got moderator Dave on duty for your comments. And I am so excited. Hi, Dawn and Emily and everybody. I'm going to jump into this right away because if I wait too long, sometimes I go back on the replay and it's like I don't even start baking for 20 minutes in. Hi, Nibbling on Toast. How are you? Hi, Stay for Dessert. So we are doing part 1 of the French Sponge Cake Week. This is week 8. We've been doing this club, the POP Baking Club, for 8 weeks. I can't even believe it. And I did it for a week before that, but once you guys suggested that we do a club, I was like, totally, because then I can take that one. Hi, Kathy Miller Acosta. I can take that one recipe and then I can build a whole week around it. So this week's a little weird because like we already did a cake, so I'm kind of reusing some of the stuff we did before, but we are doing the French sponge cake. And a sponge cake is a little different than an American shortened cake or a high ratio cake with a lot of butter. We typically see these in European type cakes, and these sponge cakes, you have all different kinds. Sponge cakes are a little drier, a little tougher than an American butter cake, right? That's when you start adding syrups and really light fillings. You can do that with an American butter cake, but with a sponge cake, you've got sometimes no fat, like an angel food cake, sometimes a little bit, like our French sponge tonight, and other times, so maybe it's all egg white, sometimes it's whole egg, and sometimes it's whole egg, but they've been whipped separately, like in the French sponge. You have a chiffon, which has oil in it. You might have a jacquard, which is what you use to make an opera cake, which has the chocolate and the coffee flavors in it. And one of my favorite cakes, a roulade, which is where you roll it up, and if you have too much fat in a cake, it cracks, so you can't roll it. That's why a sponge cake is good. So what makes our cake different tonight than a regular cake is that it's kind of technical. It's a French sponge, otherwise known as a biscuit or biscuit. It's spelled biscuit, but it's pronounced biscuit. And we are going to take egg yolks and make a pat bomb. It's not really a pat bomb because we're not going to cook it. We're going to take egg yolks and we are going to whip them to the ribbon stage. And we're going to move them to the side. Arvin said, made a roulette once, it was hard. A roulade. Yes, they are not easy. However, they're really satisfying, right? And even if they crack, it doesn't matter because you can wrap them with parchment and stick them in the fridge and they'll solidify and they're so fun. I absolutely love them. You guys know I love making bûche de Noëls. I made a bûche d'amour. But after you get your eggs to ribbon stage, those are the yolks where all your fat lives in the cake. Because the egg yolks, you can't really over whip them and they're not going to deflate like an egg white, we move those to the side and then we whip the egg whites into a meringue, and we have all these supporting characters and different ingredients that we're going to be using to make everything aerated. This is called an egg foam because we take egg and we get air into there. We don't use baking powder or baking soda in this cake. So that right there is going to make it really, really different. So in order to get it light and keep it tender, we're going to use cake flour. We're going to use trimoline, which is an ingredient we haven't used a lot here. And I'm going to show you how to do all this. We're going to get it in the oven. That's my oven heating up. And then I have a sponge cake I made today. This is the French sponge that I made today. And if you were nibbling on toast, if you were holding this weight-wise, or if I put it on the scale, it'd be a lot lighter in weight than the yellow high-ratio cake that you're eating tonight. So this is the sponge that I made today. This is a French sponge, and I'm going to show you how to stack it and use it using some of the fruit ingredients and things that I have already in my kitchen. So that will come later. But right now, I'm going to get dressed and ready to start mixing my cake and putting it in the oven. And then once it's in the oven, then we can start to play and talk and chat. So if you have questions, I will go back and look at them later. But typically, as I'm demoing and lecturing about this recipe, it's easier for my brain if we kind of stay on that one subject and then we can move to like general baking questions, which I mean, I could do a whole live just answering your general baking questions because they're all so good and you guys have so many. No, you didn't miss the fit. Hi, Wilfredo. Nope, I'm doing the fit check right now. Happy Wednesday. So I'm gonna do a fit check because I am not ready to cook. This is not acceptable, having my hair down and whatnot. So I like to be safe in the kitchen. Mostly I get weird about hair and clothes because I want everyone to be safe. I want the food to stay clean, and I like to follow some rules. And even though I don't sell anything in my kitchen, I want people to know that I respect food safety and anything that you can do to make the kitchen a safer place. So what I'm gonna do is go pull my hair back, and then I'm gonna show you how I'm dressed and how I'm gonna get my apron on, and we're gonna be ready. So I'm gonna go through that magic door over there and just pull my hair up. Your hair should always be up when you're working. I can't even tell you how many videos I've seen lately where people's hair is literally falling in their food. So just a PSA. So, all right, I'm gonna pull my hair back 2 seconds. Don't go away. Woohoo! All right, I think that'll do it. I got my hair cut, so my bangs are a little shorter, and I'm wondering if they're gonna fall out. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna put on a clean white apron. My aprons cost $5. I wear one a day, and then I wash it. I don't buy fancy, and I wear white so that I can flex that I work clean, because if you end a shift with a clean apron, you're doing a good job. And if your apron's dirty, it says how you work. And if it's dirty because you're wiping your hands on it, just remember that's not what an apron's for. An apron is to keep your clothing clean. It is not to be used as a towel. And I'm a baker, so I don't put a towel in here. Dry towels when you're culinary are so you can pick up hot pans. And as bakers, we don't need that. All right, let me get this tight. So I wear overalls. They're very heavy, heavy duty safety. And I use short sleeves. I pull my hair back. I have no jewelry on, no rings, no wrist jewelry, nothing. The only thing you're really allowed is a plain band, no diamonds. It's all for food safety. And I have short fingernails, no nail polish. So that at the very least, you know that the way that I work is clean. I'm gonna wash my hands, sanitize the countertop, and get started. Yes, and you know, there is a difference between being a culinarian and being a baker. I mean, I could write a whole article on the differences between the personalities, but back when I was teaching, my students would come in with like gray chef coats and gray, because I found out that a lot of them were just washing all their clothes together. You really do have to wash white separately, and for some of you, you're probably thinking, that's crazy, who does that? Just trust me, a lot of people do. So a white apron is really important for, it's a signal to people. And so when you go somewhere and you see filthy, dirty aprons, I can just tell you inside information that's obvious and out there. That's what the whole place is like. The whole kitchen, the bathrooms, everything. All right, so I'm gonna put you all over here. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna get this started. We're doing the French sponge cake. And I will do a combination of kind of showing you what's going on and then looking through my notes, and hopefully you guys remind me to do a bunch of close-ups and stuff like that. I want you to be able to see what I'm working on. All right. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kathleen. I'm a pastry chef. I was an instructor at the college level for over 12 years, and I've been in the industry since I was 15. I've done a lot, but my focus has been on baking and pastry for a very long time. And I believe in the fundamentals and building a really strong practice out of doing things the right way, and doing a little bit every day so that you get better. Because when you work in a way that has purpose and intention, and you work clean, and you think like an ingredient, and you consider every aspect of what you're doing, you are building really good practices. And I personally believe that these practices bleed into other parts of your life. If you keep a really organized work area while you're working and your kitchen's organized, I bet your whole life's going to be like that. And it's not about perfectionism, and it's not about being overwhelmingly neat and organized. It's about developing really easy systems that you can lean on so that you don't have to think about it all the time. It becomes a muscle memory, which is the whole key. All right. So let me get the counter done, and then we'll start talking about the recipe that we're doing today. I have already cleaned my countertop, but I just show you that I use this disinfectant. It doesn't matter what brand it is. It says it is antiviral, 99.9% disinfectant. And I just like to do that to make sure that earlier today I was working with raw eggs, and that, you know, we just don't have any cross-contamination in my work area. All right, and I wash my hands, and then we get started. hot. I love having hot water in the kitchen. Dries out my hands though, I'll tell you that much. How is everyone doing today? You all ready to do a French sponge cake? All right, I am. So we will look at what we're gonna do today and then we will get right into it. Thank you. Yep, that's what I say, that's what I like to hear. All right, so on my link tree, I have this recipe, okay? This is the French sponge cake, and what I like about this formulator is that the ingredients that I add are in groups. So the first grouping is the egg yolk, the first sugar, and trimoline. And then cake flour, butter is in its own category with vanilla bean paste, and then down here we have the stuff for the meringue, the egg white, the sucrose, cream of tartar, and sea salt. When I look at this recipe, I already know which parts are going to go together and in what order, because I'm doing the egg yolk ribbon first. And so this is a visual representation of my recipe. We are doing right down this center. So oftentimes I will give you amounts of the original batch, and then this one, it happens to be 100%, but these are the weights. I don't know how much fits into every pan out there, but you can Google it or look it up, and if you look at the weight, you can adjust that to fit any pan. I don't always worry about a pan. Sometimes I eyeball it. If I were doing this professionally, I'd have it all dialed in, but you want to fill a pan 3/4 of the way full. That's generally the rule. So no matter what this makes, I'm putting this in an 8-inch, 2 8-inch rounds, but you could do 3 6-inch rounds. And I'm very loosey-goosey with that. So if you ask me, I don't always know, but because it's in grams, it's gonna make it easier for you to figure out. All right, so I uploaded today. I'm also on Substack. And on Substack, I usually add my notes. This is what I know, and I have more information. I'll probably be updating those notes on French sponge cake notes on Substack. And then when I am looking at any recipe, I will make a mistake if I don't diagram it out. And everyone views and imagines recipes differently, so this is how I imagine it. So I go through and I write it until I am comfortable that when I stick this to the wall, I can be looking at it. I don't have to read through all these words. You know how recipes and books are like paragraphs? That's so impossible to keep track of when you're right in the middle and you've got a meringue is coming to medium peak and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're sort of, let's say you're making, an Italian buttercream or meringue and it's coming to temp and you don't know what to do next. This is going to be the most helpful thing because you're going to be able to group and look. This is what works for me. Maybe squares or rectangles or color coding would help you. This is what works for me. And this is what I'm going to be doing today, the French sponge. A French sponge is making a ribbon egg, putting it off to the side, sifting your flour, melting the butter with the vanilla bean paste, making a meringue, folding the sifted flour into the ribbon egg, the yolk, and then folding in the flour, and then taking a little bit of that batter and tempering it into the melted butter, and then folding in the meringue to all of this, and then at the end, folding in the melted butter with a little bit of batter. So all these groupings naturally kind of don't want to go together, but we're gonna make them go together with all these little tricks: time, temperature, and our tools. These are the 3 things we can use to get a really nice emulsification so we can get a really nice sponge cake. And even though I'm gonna make this and get it in the oven, I made this exact one today, and I'm gonna be able to show you the finished product once I pop this one into the oven. I set my oven to 345. I have an oven thermometer in there. At 345, it comes out to 350. So for my oven, 345 makes it 350. Whatever your oven, I've had ovens that you set at 360 and they're at 350. It all depends. The one we have in our apartment that we rent runs hot, so we have to turn it down to like 335 just to get it at 350. I'm Kathleen. For anyone who's just joined, I'm going to be making a French sponge cake. I'm going to grab a mixer, all of my ingredients, and I'm going to take you through the whole process, explaining what I'm doing and why and how these ingredients work. And we're all going to think like an ingredient. Bake with Lovely says that her oven is off. I assume it's she is set, but I could be wrong. Is 75 degrees off. And that seems crazy and like, oh, my oven's broken, but if you can dial it in with an oven thermometer, who cares? Yes. Isn't that interesting? Wilfredo says, I started using a pizza oven thermometer to check. Your oven can be any temperature it wants to be. And how would you know if you didn't have a thermometer? We are not using a convection oven. That's a great question. So if you're preheating the oven, with a cake, you don't want convection, because convection is like air and it crisps things up. And with a cake, if you crisp up the top too quickly, it's not going to continue to lift, and it's going to get overbaked on the top, and the inside's not going to bake. So we want more of an even. Oven thermometer is key. Number one thing I always ask, are you scaling? Are you doing it in grams? Do you have a digital scale? Do you have a thermometer for your oven? You know, temperature matters, and you would really hate, and one of the reasons some people don't like baking is because every step of the way, you get to the next step and you mess it up, then everything's ruined. So that's why if you think ahead and plan everything, you're less likely to run into a problem, and one good step leads to the next good step, and so on and so forth. So you end up with a really great finished product. So keep the questions coming. I'm going to show you real quick so I can put these away. Today I took my anglaise that I had left over, and I had left this vanilla bean pod that I had split when I cooked it. You're welcome. And I rinsed it off, and I didn't rinse it hard and squeeze out all the little seeds. And now I have it on a paper towel. It's been rinsed of the dairy. And then this is just going to sit until it dries. Once it's dry, I'm going to stick it in my 10X so I can have vanilla powdered sugar. Thank you. The Pez dispensers, the Kiss ones, are so popular, Tim. I got them for my husband. He loves Kiss. Do you love Kiss? Your croissants come out like a biscuit. You're probably combining the flour too much. Well, you need a good dough, and then when you laminate it, everything's got to be the right temperature so they're not getting intermingled. You're really layering versus, you know, creaming. Croissants, I've said this before, hardest thing in the world. All right, let me grab my ingredients. Here they are. I'm going to grab a bowl, my mixer. Okay. For all baking, we don't use convection. Oh, no. For cakes, I wouldn't use convection for cakes or even bars. All different kinds of heat are going to bake differently. And when you're making a cake, you need it to rise and then begin to set. And in fact, it's the same with bread. That's why we use steam when we make artisan bread. You need it to expand and be moist and then dry out. But convection's drying it out the second it goes in the oven because the airflow does that. And that's good for crispy cookies and things. But for a cake, you're going to end up with a burned top and an underbaked interior. Oh yeah, I ate the pavlova. I ate a lot. I ate a bunch of them. Are you kidding? And all the toppings. And I ate fruit for days. Thank you, Tim. The pavlova was good. I'm still bummed about the not being able to taste the blueberry one. And I was looking at the video today and I'm like, it looks so good. So I might make it one more time with like a raspberry for spring, you know, and do something bright and pink and fun. Okay, so here's our recipe. You can get this on the Linktree, print it out. I suggest that if you're doing this, you take notes. So on the Linktree, these are the instructions, and these are my notes. These notes also live on Substack with this, and this is the method that you'll see when you print it. And if you're wondering, where is this? Because these are my notes. So I'm going to tell you some things that aren't necessarily in here. I don't like this to get too wordy. But as you listen to me, take notes for things that sort of stick out, that stand out for you, okay? So like I said, these are grouped. So we're going to go through and look at the recipe. Let me put my pen over there. Okay, egg yolk. And I do it in grams. This is what I'm looking at, and I need 230 grams. So I look at the label, and I verify I have the right amount. This is a physical manifestation of the recipe. This is as well, okay? These are all checks and balances I use so that I don't make a mistake. And I scaled all of these yesterday. Add sucrose. Okay, so if you look at the recipe, there are 2 sugars. And they are different amounts. And the first one is for the ribbon egg, and that's the sucrose is at 91% of the weight of the flour. For the egg white, it's at 55%. So these are 2 different scalings of sucrose. So when you are preparing your ingredients, you have to be aware that there are two different sucroses. Occasionally in recipes, they'll give you the one amount, and then you'll just have to remember to divide it up. But in this case, when you are doing this recipe, you have to pay attention to those kinds of things. So the very first thing, I'm going to put it together like this, just like this grouping. Egg yolk, sucrose at 100 grams, and 39 grams of trimoline. Trimoline is going in with the egg yolks to make a ribbon egg because it's not only adding moisture, but it's helping to create air bubbles. Because we aren't using baking soda or powder, we have to create air cells because you create air cells in the bowl and you don't make new air cells any other time than when you're whipping them in. So whatever you create in the bowl is what you're left with. So we want as many air cells as we can get. This trimoline, which is like 127% sweetening power relative to sucrose. If sucrose is 100% sweet, this is 127% sweet. And it's a moistener, and it helps with emulsification. So that's our egg yolk ribbon egg. Then we have cake flour, 110 grams. It's not very much. Cake flour has less gluten in it, so it has more starch, which means it's going to clump. So we're going to have to sift that. I'm going to put it next to it. It's not with the egg, it's next to it because it's got its own treatment. And then we have butter, 70 grams of butter, and 5 grams of vanilla bean paste. And these two things are going to be melted together, so I'm going to put them together. The very last thing is my egg white meringue. And for that, I have 190 grams of egg white, 60 grams of sucrose, and then I have cream of tartar, 0.5 grams of that, and 0.5 grams of sea salt. Not kosher. If you use kosher, you have to do it by weight. And then you're fine. I just happen to like this fleur de sel that I use, not a big deal. So I'm going to begin with the egg foam or the ribbon egg. And the ribbon egg means we are taking the trimoline, the sucrose, and the egg yolk, and we are whipping it with a whip on the mixer in a bowl, and we are trying to whip air into it. And in order to do that, we're going to whip it on a little bit higher than I do a meringue because you can't really over whip an egg yolk. It's all fat, has very little, it's got emulsifiers and things. It doesn't have the protein like the egg yolk or egg white. The egg white's going to be making these bubbles and grabbing onto air. That's what makes a meringue. But think about fat doing that. It's only going to gather so much air, so we need to help it along. Okay, so I'm going to move this over here. When I take off my ingredients, I put them right here so I can keep track of it. And I've got the trimoline and this. I'm going to move these things out of the way so they don't get me in trouble. And these are my 3 things I'm working with right now. So I'm going to plug this guy in. It's going to get a little loud with the machine, but we'll be okay. Shut this window just a little. Okay. Let me get a spatula. All right. Now the one thing, when you work with glucose or trimoline, or honey or anything like that, is it doesn't really come out. So I'm going to pop this in the microwave for about 5 seconds. That's it. Woohoo! Yep. And it's just going to loosen it up just a little bit. You see now it's flowy. All right, and then the eggs will go in here. I will clean out my container, get as much in here as I can. Egg yolks are miracles. They have emulsifiers called lecithin naturally occurring in the egg yolk. And so egg yolks do a lot of amazing things. They make other things creamy. Let me see. Let me get that going. I'm going to do it on a little bit higher than I normally would an egg white, because I don't want to overwork the proteins in an egg white, but they don't have the proteins like the egg white does. Oh my gosh, the microwave, I don't like cooking in the microwave, but I do like to use it for little things like loosening up chocolate and things like that. Can we replace trimoline for glucose? No, you can't. They're very different. Glucose is only 50 SPs. Remember I said this is one. All right, well, hold on. Let me get some of the sugar in. I'm going to add 1/3 of the sugar, and then I'm going to pour some of the trimoline in, and then I'll answer your trimoline question. Everything I do, let me rinse this off. So when I start adding things all separately, it's because I want everything to go ahead and take its time. I don't need to rush everything and just dump it all in. If you dump it all in, not only do you get things tending to clump up, but if they're clumping to the point where you can see them, imagine what they're doing at like a cellular level. You're not starting out with an emulsified, process. You're already skipping a bunch of stages so that, I need to get a wet towel. You're skipping a bunch of wet stages so that nothing has a chance to get used to each other. And all emulsification is having things and ingredients that don't like each other, like oil and water, or are different temperatures, different textures. I mean, think about when you're trying to add something to a really dry dough and it just gets rejected, or you have a lot of fat and you're trying to add a cold liquid and it gets rejected. That's the opposite of emulsifying something well. So when I add a little bit at a time, I'm just starting manually telling the ingredients, listen, I'm going to give you some time to get to know each other and get along in the bowl. So this is grainy. I will pull the camera over here. This is grainy and it's just starting. It's going to get air in it and it's going to get light in color. And the trimoline is not the same as glucose syrup. Glucose syrup has an acid in it, so that's why it's really helpful when you're making caramelized sugar. I got my trimoline on Amazon. Let me show you. So this is Nuvoline. This is what I got on Amazon, and it's going to last me a long time. Sugar doesn't really get old. So this is good, and I bought it a while ago. It's good through 2025. So it's sugar. It looks like kind of pearl. Where's the plate? It looks white. Okay. There's no acid in here. It's 127 SP. And the glucose, I'll show you. Glucose, don't be fooled by some of the people selling invert sugars, just corn syrup. This is what it looks like. It's clear. This is only 50 SP, so it's half as sweet as sugar, sucrose, table sugar. So look at how, I go through this really fast because I use it for caramel and for all kinds of stuff. Let me show you what's going on in the bowl. It's already getting lighter. And I think this recipe is so fun. Okay, so look at that. Look at how light it is already. And I'm going to stir it. And I don't like all of the grain. See the granulars of sugar on the side of the bowl? I want to get that off of there, so I'm going to take this. I could use a spatula, but I'm just going to use the whip. Sorry, let me just make sure. I just want to make sure these are kind of incorporated. But ribbon means that when you drizzle this into the egg, that it sits on top for a couple of seconds, at least 2 to 3, maybe 4. So we're not there yet. I don't need to go super high, but it's the only thing you will ever see me whip on high is an egg foam or a ribbon egg. So trimoline and glucose are different. I wish you could just have to buy the one thing, but they do different things. And they mostly help with emulsification by adding this locked-in moisture that helps create the ability for these ingredients to make aerosols. With glucose, you are adding an acid, and it helps prevent crystallization and some other things. And they look different, and they have different sweetening powers, and they are different. I am going to make an ermine frosting for Sunday. I've been researching it, and I have 2 icings I'm going to put onto the sponge that I already made today. So I'm going to be putting the Russian buttercream inside, and I've got fresh fruit, and I'm going to show you how to stir up a sponge. And then I'm gonna cover it and we'll talk while I'm kind of decorating. I have a bunch of sugar petals I can use. I can't even tell you how many people have asked for the ermine frosting. A lot. I'm going to do it because you guys want it. So look how light it's gotten. So this goes relatively fast, and it is not, I have to tell you, these have to be, your eggs have to be room temperature. These have been out all day. If you use cold eggs, you are not going to have a good result. You're not going to get the emulsification that you need because, because warm things emulsify better. So you can see how the ribbons are sticking on top, but they still, let me explain what I'm looking for. So if I do that, they disappear pretty quick. We want them to stay on top just a little bit longer. So I'm gonna go just a little bit longer. Ooh, so this is egg yolk, trimoline, and sucrose. And we are trapping air in the egg yolk, which typically wouldn't allow a lot of air to get trapped in it. So we're using ingredients to do that. We're using time, which is to let this work itself naturally into an aerated state. We're using our tools, which is the machine, to beat air into there. We're using temperature by making sure that our ingredients are closer together. Because if you have cold and hot, they're not going to like each other. And the essence of emulsification is making two things that don't typically want to go together. So I'm going to stir, stir, stir. This is getting lighter in color. When you add air, you're adding oxygen, it's going to lighten. That's what like OxyClean does. It whitens. We are very close, and I'm just going to go a little longer because what we're going to do is take these eggs and they're going to sit while I make the meringue. So I want to make it just a titch stronger. And then meanwhile, that's going to finish very quickly, so I'm going to keep this moving. I need to sift out my cake flour. All right, so I have 110 grams of cake flour. It's going to go into my tammy. And then I'm going to sift it out. That's it, it's all done. And this I'm going to put off to the side, out of the way. Meanwhile, in order to make my meringue, I would like to clean this because when you have any residual fat on your tools, it's hard to make an egg white meringue. Because the fat is counterindicated to the meringue proteins being able to create a network. All right. I need to yeah, okay, so this is good. Okay. So I'm gonna do this. You see how those are staying on there a little bit longer? You can see they're not dissipating right away. So I'm going to get rid of the whip. I'm going to take my rubber spatula and I'm just going to clean up the edges because you know these edges can dry out, right? Because of surface area. And so I'm going to clean this up like so. Okay, see how nice and clean that bowl is now? I'm going to slide it around after I just cleaned it. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is just going to go off to the side, just over here. It's going to be in waiting. If I did that with a meringue made out of egg whites, what would happen? Possibly, and most likely, the water would release itself from the meringue because this is just a simple meringue. There's no heat applied, and so that's not a strong emulsion. When you stop mixing it, what we're doing is egg whites are full of water and protein, and when you stop mixing it, the water gets expressed. So we need to make the meringue, get it to where we want it, and then we need to start using it because we don't want it to deflate because all the air bubbles we have in here and all the air bubbles we're going to create in here, we want to get them in the oven because the air bubbles is what's going to fill up with, it's either gas or steam, depending on what kind of baking you're doing. So that's what we're working on. So what I need is to clean this And then I have 3 things. I have cream of tartar, sea salt for flavor, and the cream of tartar is an acid. Acids irritate the proteins, which makes them stronger. That's why when you put acid into cream, it curdles. That is a protein that's been activated. It's been pre-coagulated. This is my sucrose. It's just table sugar. I don't, no, trimoline. The question is, can we change the trimoline with invert sugar? The problem with buying, the answer is no, because trimoline is very specific. It's a very specifically designed ingredient to do specifically what we need it to do. Let me get the vinegar to clean this stuff. So in other words, and also if you're ordering this stuff online and you order invert sugar, this invert sugar is different than trimoline. It doesn't have the same sweetening power. It doesn't have the emulsifiers in it. And if you buy it online and you don't know what it is, it could just be Caro syrup. A lot of people just repackage it and then label it invert sugar. Now, invert sugar can just be a general term as well, like molasses and maple syrup and honey are all invert sugars. You keep a spray bottle, that's a good idea. One time, a long time ago, I was talking to someone about doing a lot of royal icing, and it was like cookie decorating, and I said, well, you'd have to like keep things clean, and they were basically like, that would never happen in anyone's bake shop. And I was like, well, I guess it depends on where you work. But I have since met people who, when they work with a lot of royal icing, do that. So the egg is going to go in here. And I'm going to start this on low for about a minute just to break up the proteins. And you know what that means? Means, I call it glooping. It's when you pull your egg whites and they all stick together. That's protein. They're all holding on to each other, okay? So we want to break it up just a little bit, and then we will add the cream of tartar and the salt, and then I will add the sucrose in thirds, a little bit at a time, so that this can catch up. Because when you add sucrose to your meringues, once you start whipping them, it's going to deflate a little bit, it's going to weigh them down, but then this is going to start to dissolve into the water that lives in the egg whites, and then everything's going to start to go together. You're going to start to whip air in there, and then you're going to start to get a meringue. I love that. That's the cutest. Thank you. So after about a minute, it should be slightly foamy. You can see you just start to get foamy is just the bubbles on the outside. So after it's been about a minute, I'm going to add the salt, and I'm going to add the cream of tartar. And then we're going to do this for another minute until it becomes even bubblier. And then I will begin to add the sucrose. Now, one of the things I really like about this recipe that I've shared with you, and one of the philosophies I have, is that this is a small amount. It's 805 grams, which is about a pound, 12 ounces. And I leave the ounces in here for estimation purposes if you're shopping. Everything, even in the United States, does have grams on it when you're buying it, and the more you practice with it, the more comfortable you'll get with volume amounts. You'll begin to recognize things. So this is how foamy it's gotten. Much foamier. So for an egg white meringue, I'm never going to put this on fast. It's always going to be on medium to medium high, never on high. So I'm going to add the first third of the sucrose, just like that. This is my bowl that I'm going to be using to melt my butter and to put my vanilla bean paste in. This is my vanilla bean paste. I love how you can see through it. So I'm going to add another third of the sugar. Give it just a second, then I'll add the last third, and then maybe I'll turn it up just a little bit. And I'll make sure that I don't have a bunch of crystals all around the edge. I want to make sure that it's mixed in. Okay, hold on, we're going to spatula. Sucrose. There we go, and then I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Oh, I need a little spatula. I like my short little spatulas because they fit in the microwave. And butter, you want to melt very slowly, and you want to stop before it's completely melted, because if you keep going, it's just unnecessary, because if you leave it sit, the heat will continue to melt it. All right, so there's my vanilla bean paste. Try to get as much out as I can and into the microwave. I have it set for 20 seconds. I'm going to show you this bowl as soon as I get the butter out. I just want to look at it. It's very foamy. And I will show you in 2 seconds. So we have all these things coming together. We have our egg foam, which is called a ribbon egg. We have our egg white meringue, and we have our fat. Butter is fat. It's fat, and we have flavoring in the form of salt and a vanilla bean paste. So this is what I mean. This has got chunks in it, but if I just leave it, it'll probably melt. If it doesn't, I can give it a 4-second blast in the microwave. Okay, so now that I've used, and this is cold, I'm not going to pull out the torch, but really this should be a little bit warmer. And that way my proteins will relax a little bit more. You know how protein and muscle likes to be warm. So we'll look at, this is going to be very liquidy. And we are looking for a medium stiff peak. And it's very runny, so we're just going to keep going. I'm not going to turn it up, and I'm not going to rush it. I'm going to let time take its course. You don't need to rush things or go fast to make them happen. You can just let them happen. Just take the time. Be patient. Okay, so let's see. So my butter is melting, and I have all of my stickers with the ingredients. And I'm going to take them like this. I'm not going to crumple them up, because if I have any problems, you just never know. You cannot predict the problems you are going to have. Mary, what did you need to hear? That you can take time? What else do I need? Okay. So my favorite part is putting all of these ingredients together. I'm glad you guys are learning. This is a wonderful recipe. Look at this. We have egg foam in the form of yolk, fat, and we have egg foam in the form of white. So when we do the reverse creaming method, that's different than the creaming method. This is different than a chiffon cake or an angel food cake that just has either just egg white or a whole egg whipped together. These are all slightly different, and that is pastry. I think when you start to take these different components and techniques and put them together, you really have weapons in the kitchen. Here's what I can say about feeling rushed. If you take the time to scale, like I scaled all of this yesterday, read through the recipe, did all my notes, did my mapping out and diagramming of the recipe, read through it, got all pre-prepped yesterday. And then today, this morning, I made the one cake. It's the same. So this is still running. Still running, so I'm just going to keep going. I have set aside time to do this. So if you're feeling rushed, it might be because you're scaling, reading, finding ingredients, discovering that you don't have enough. Maybe you made a mistake and you got a little yolk in your egg white, so now you don't have enough egg whites, so you can't even do it. Those kinds of things set you back. So if you divide out the different stages of the recipe, yeah, prep is very helpful. Prep is not about adding steps. It's not about adding work. It's actually about just parsing it out a little bit and building in time. So if you go and you try to, scale your egg whites and you make a mistake, you get yolk in there, even a tiny bit you cannot use, then you still have tomorrow. You can be like, I'll just do it tomorrow. And you can scale all those ingredients that I had with the labels 7 days in advance. You can scale it days in advance. So if you want to do all your baking on Saturday morning, you can scale on Wednesday. You can scale whenever you have time. Oh, good. I love King Arthur cake flour, and unfortunately, these recipes are very specific, but they're, the cake flour is very important in this recipe, and so I think it's great that you went ahead and ordered it. So in order to check if something is peak, a lot of people will flip it, or they'll shake it, or they'll want to make it do something. Once again, you can't make the ingredients do anything. You just have to let them tell you what they're doing. So this tells me, when I just turn it, it's not at peak at all. But I'm going to hold the camera over here so you can see it. But I'm also not going to walk away, because with a lot of things in pastry, just when you think it's taken forever and then you turn your back and it's done, That's how things work. They reach a point and then they tip into being rapidly finished. It can be with heat. When you're cooking something, it takes forever, and then all of a sudden you're at temp. Same thing with this, and I'll show you what this looks like when I stop. So when I lift up, you can see that. Did you see how that stretches? When I talk about don't do your meringue so dry, see that? That is a flexible meringue, beautiful, okay? So I don't want to whip this to the point where when I do this, it just breaks. Look at that, stretchy. Ugh, I mean, I just get so excited about all this. Okay, so you can see like it's building air and it's sitting on top just like that yolk did, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for it to stand up. So it's not peak at all. It's not even soft peak. So we're gonna keep going, but we're not gonna speed it up, and we are gonna luxuriate in taking our time. And I'll tell you why. Because we're here. We are here now doing this activity, and by paying attention and just giving it a little bit of our care, it pays off when we serve it. Someone says, oh my gosh, this cake is so tender and delicious and moist and wonderful, and it's because you literally cared about every single step. And it's not that hard to do. It just get into a mindset where this is what you're doing right now and enjoy it. It is a good life lesson. Pastry, ingredients force you to get rid of your ego. You cannot tell this egg what to do. I could whip it on high and then it'll fall apart in the oven and I'll have unstable bubbles and I'll have a yucky cake. So you can do whatever you want, but the ingredients are going to do whatever they want. They're going to win. They're going to win every time. Okay, so the question is, would it still be French sponge with milk or oil? No. If you add oil, you're getting into like a chiffon cake and other things. So all the different names are based off of what kind of fat does it have? Does it have any fat at all? Are you whipping just egg whites, whole eggs, like we are right now, you know, yolks and whites separately? That is how you define it. So there are tons of different names, so many. And right now with the French biscuit, this is a little bit of butter. And we add the butter in a very specific way, but you know, not all French sponge has butter, but they all have the white and the yolk whipped. So we're getting to a little bit softer. And again, maybe you guys have seen me do some things, and because someone said one time, I've never taken that long to whip a whipped cream. Yeah, because I just go low and slow. I'm not in a rush. Not in a rush. Because there is no rush. Okay, so it's a little cold here, so this is starting to solidify. So I'm going to put it in the microwave, but I'm not going to give it a 5-second blast until I'm ready. And I'm going to get the microwave all set up. So see, I'm stopping it. And you can't really tell sometimes when you look in a bowl, is something ready? So you really just have to stop it. And don't let anyone bully you if you're stopping the bowl a lot and looking. Look at that. So to me, this is a medium peak. I mean, maybe I could go just a little bit more. Yeah, I'll go a little bit more. It's a soft peak. You don't want to overdo it or underdo it, and that's a judgment call, but you want to err on the side of giving those protein strands room to grow in the oven, because when they start to expand, put your batter in and it grows. If you whip all the moisture out of this and you stretch those proteins all the way where if they go any further they're going to tear, then you don't have anywhere to go in the oven. So you want to maintain a certain amount of moisture, and you want to maintain a certain amount of flexibility in the protein. And adding things in thirds is not just about the sucrose, it's about adding everything almost in thirds. When people dump flour in, when they dump sugar in, or they put all the ingredients into the bowl at one time, this creates lumps. It does not create a cohesive mix, and it does not allow the ingredients to slowly get to know each other. So could you do it in halves? Could you do it in, quarters? Could you do it a little bit? People will recommend like you add a tablespoon at a time when you make a meringue. You can do that. The point is not so much thirds, although I love the rule of thirds because it's easy to remember, but it's about adding a little bit at a time and remembering that that is what the ingredients need you to do. So let's take a look and see if this has gotten any stronger. And then, yeah, I can tell. All right. So you let it drop, then you lift it. I'm going to go just a little bit more. And then we're gonna pull it off and then magic's gonna happen. I'm gonna show you. So you can see the streaks forming behind the whip. So we know it's getting stronger. And we're not gonna need a lot of time to get it stronger. Okay, so that's pretty strong. I think this is gonna be it. So did you see how that broke like nice and stretchy? I like that. There we go. And it's nice and strong. Okay? And you can see it's glossy. It's not gritty. That's very important. And it's still shiny. If there was no shine, that would mean we whipped all the moisture out. The shine says, hold on. The shine tells me there's still plenty of moisture in there. And the moisture is important for all the reasons I said. We need, because our leavening is basically the water that lives inside of our ingredients, is going to steam. And that's going to fill up the air cells, and that's going to make the crumb of the cake go up. That's our leavener. Leavener is to lighten our leaven. Take that out. Look how good that looks. Shiny. Beautiful. Sturdy. Okay. So let me get rid of the machine. All right, so this is the fun part. This is where we get to do some more of our skills. All right, so I have these ingredients. I'm gonna blast my butter. And today I made a video, so if you guys missed anything, the video I made and posted on my profile page is on this cake. A says, will the texture change if the egg whites are whipped too much? Oh, shoot. So at least I noticed. So here's my melted butter. It's gonna go right here. Will the texture change? Absolutely. You won't have as much moisture. Your proteins will not be able to grow because it won't be able to stretch. So you're gonna have more of a dense cake, not as light. And with less moisture, it's gonna be drier. And you know, sponge cakes are drier than an American butter cake anyway because they don't have as much fat. So it's not just moisture that makes your cake moist. It's the fat sometimes that covers all the flour and gives you the nice mouthfeel. So I did make this cake today. I videoed it and I posted it right before I started. So the French sponge cake is on my profile page on TikTok. It's also on my Substack with my notes, all my notes and my diagram. And then the link tree has the recipe with the instructions. These notes just talk a little bit more about ingredient function and other things that might be of interest to you. So you can go watch the video and watch how I did it. I made one change, which is to add the fat before the meringue. So this time I'm gonna add it after. So I'm gonna tell you right now what I'm gonna do, okay? And I'm gonna do it at the same time. This bowl is the right size. It's shallow and wide. I'm not going to fold the ingredients into here. It's too narrow. That's stirring. We are going to fold, which is to incorporate ingredients without deflating. And you need to have a wider, shallower bowl to fold properly. So I'm going to put this in here. I can see the egg. And you don't do the meringue first. You always want to do the yolk because this is going to deflate much less. You can't over whip it, and that's the order in which you're going to get a better overall product. So this egg is called a ribbon egg, and look at how light and nice it is. You can see those little eggs, the egg yolks I started with, this is what they are. They're beautiful, glossy, there's moisture in there, beautiful. Now I'm going to do something that's a little different. I'm going to take a whisk, and I'm going to fold using a whisk. And I'm going to start with the flour. This is cake flour, and I sifted it. And remember, adding everything in thirds. So I am going to sift or add nice and gently around the flour. And then I'm going to fold in by pulling, lifting, turning the bowl. So I'm not going back and stirring. I am lifting and turning the bowl. That's it. That's folding. I'm going to add a little bit more. That's my second third. And usually your third is the smallest quantity. And also, I am not going to fold this and incorporate it until there are no streaks, because then you would be over incorporating it and you would be deflating it. So I'm just looking for large areas of flour that are not incorporated, but that's what it's going to look like. You can still see a lot of flour on the edges of the bowl. Thank you. Look at that cute heart. So there's still flour around. Not going to worry about that. I have one more addition of flour. Like that. Going to use the whisk to incorporate it. And on this turn, I'm going to make sure there are no streaks. If you were doing a mousse and you were incorporating, let's say, whipped cream into the mousse, and you left streaks, that's where your weak spot is going to be. So you want to think about those streaks the same way. All right, so now here's the interesting thing. I'm going to take my melted butter. This is the melted butter with vanilla bean paste. You can see the vanilla bean in there. And I'm going to take a little bit of the batter into the fat. And when I talk specifically about ingredients and about categories of ingredients, you know, when I say fat, this could be another kind of fat. It just happens to be butter. But fat is fat, and it's a good way of thinking about what you're doing, categorizing your ingredients. Okay, so that's going to go off to the side. And then I'm going to take the meringue. This is so exciting to me. We eat everything or give it away. So I'm going to take 1/3 of this meringue, just like this. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful. Put it in, and then I am going to fold it in. And you want to use a whisk that has a really nice open structure. You don't want to smash it. Okay, so do you see how there's still streaks of meringue? I'm just going to leave it. I don't want to overdo this. So then I'm going to take a little more meringue into here. And then I am going to fold by turning the bowl, lifting, lifting, lifting. I am not stirring. Let's get that out. Okay. So I still have streaks. Can you see those? All the white streaks. So I'm going to, at this point, switch to a spatula, a rubber or silicone spatula. And then I'm going to take my meringue, and you can see there's some cake batter in there. And I'm going to put all of this right in the center. I want to make sure to get as much out of here as I can. All of it's important. All right. Perfect. All right. And then this is really fun. So you have this. You have a round part for the bottom of the bowl, and you have this very angular. Okay? It's like a chopper. You're going to chop, lift, turn. Chop, lift, turn. Chop, lift, turn. And then you're going to speed it up. And I am not going to get every streak out of here because I'm adding the fat. And I'm going to add the fat all at once because I don't want to deflate it. So I want to start working much quicker than I have been. And if you're doing this at home, focus, ask people to leave you alone, because you do need to work quickly because we really need to preserve all of these air cells. There are some biscuits that do not have fat in them. Chop, lift, turn. Chop, lift, turn. But this one does. And that is what makes this really great for making into a wedding cake. It's a sponge cake. If you are looking to add to your repertoire a European sponge that's in between a really thin sponge and an American butter cake, this is your cake. This is definitely your cake. Now I'm going to go around, clean up the edges, and then I'm going to just verify that at the bottom, Everything is combined. I don't see any streaks. I'm good to go. And then I'm gonna grab my pans. I'm putting this. Now there are some theories about these cakes not having any spray because you want them to grab onto the edges so they have something. But because of the butter fat, I'm gonna go ahead and spray these. I'm using Pam spray, but I often use a butter flour combination. And I just use a teeny tiny little parchment in the center. You definitely don't want to go on the edges because that's going to compromise the edges of your cake. And when the edges of your cake are all crinkly, that starts you out with a crinkly cake that's not even. So I'm going to eyeball this, but if you are working in a way where you want everything to be perfect, you can scale everything. You can weigh it all out of yolk poured into the meringue versus meringue. Well, I mean, you want to start with the stronger or the thicker, which is the fat, because the meringue is the delicate one. So you're going to fold the weaker into the stronger, which is sort of what we're doing. All right, so I am eyeballing this, but I don't know if you can see, we have a beautiful emulsion. It's not curdled. It's incredibly light. It's pretty. I can see the vanilla bean is gorge, and it's shiny. All of this tells me that I should get a pretty good rise in the oven. If it were not shiny, kind of sticking to the bowl, deflated, separated, any of these things would concern me. But I don't have that problem right now. Okay, so I will show you this before I put it in the oven. Dish bin. When you put it in the oven, you don't have, it's not like a souffle, you don't have to be crazy concerned about it, but do be aware, you need to get it in quickly and you need to close the door. See all the bubbles? Look at that. Look at that. Look at those bubbles. I made those bubbles. Those bubbles are my babies. That's my baby bubbles. All right, so I'm gonna put it in the oven. Gorgeous. And you don't want to slide this around so the batter gets all up on the edges. You wanna be very even. Work very gently and very quickly. And I'm going to set it, because I did this today, at 20 minutes. And then I will show you what it looks like. And at 20 minutes, I'm actually going to turn down my temperature, because of the way my oven works, if I turn it down by 5 degrees, it won't get so dark on top. Wouldn't the whisk incorporate more air versus the spatula? Well, I want the air. Well, I think, can you tell me maybe more specifically what that question means? I've added all the air during the whipping stages, so I don't want to deflate it. When you fold, you are not incorporating air. You are avoiding deflating. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm going to get, because we are going to do, for fun, while that's in the oven, and we can just talk, and there's nothing on the agenda for this, but we're going to do it because we're here. This is a sponge cake that's in the oven. It's very lightweight. I have 2 of them and a cake stand, and I'm going to put them together, but let me get all my stuff. So folding with the whisk versus this. Yeah, so actually when you use the whisk, you're deflating less, much less. It's very gentle. And I was taught that in pastry school by a guy I trust, and then it was confirmed by a lot of other chefs. But you don't have to do it. You can just use a spatula. But really my takeaway on that, on the folding, is I cringe when I see people do it in a tall, narrow mixer bowl or something. You're not folding. You're stirring, and a lot of times those same people make their meringues on high, and everything's fast, and then they stir it, and they're like, it's fine. You're correct. It's fine. I don't aim for fine. I don't ever aim for the middle. I aim for the best. And if I fall short of that, I just try to think like, oh, how could I have done better? And I reevaluate. But so here's what I'm going to do. I have a cake stand. I have my decorator stuff. I have some fun stuff I can do. Folding is, it's an extra. Think about that. Nobody is going to go through their life, and if you don't know how to fold, are going to, have missed out on something. But if you know something and it does inch your final product to being like awesome, then why not? And I'm not kidding. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't run around thinking I'm a great baker, but I can tell you, when I make something for somebody and they say to me, mine doesn't taste like that. Or that tastes different than anything I've ever had. Like, I know that if you take something to the next level, you create something that's not ordinary. And to me, that's the fun part. That's the only fun part. And when you deliver a dessert or something, you don't tell them anything about it. You just give it to them. It's a full sentence. It's a complete story. It's like when you read a story someone's written or a sentence and you don't understand it and someone has to explain it to you, they didn't write it very well. If you have to explain what went wrong or what you intended with your desserts, you didn't do it right. And you want to give a dessert and walk away and just have people find you and say, oh my gosh, I've had a million vanilla cakes, but that blew my mind. That's a compliment. So a sponge cake, actually, you know what's great for sponge cake? They're more delicate, although this is relatively sturdy. So I'm going to grab all my stuff and then I can talk while we're doing that. So I think like, you know, whipped, lighter, European buttercream. So I'm not going to put an American buttercream on here. But you do want to meet the textures. They want to be kind of close together. So you don't want to dig into a really delicate cake and then end up having, you know, an inappropriately heavy, cloying interior. So we'll think about that. Okay, let me grab some fruit. So I have the tiniest bit of the lemon cream from last week and the passion cream. Oh my gosh, I mean, I've been eating it, quite frankly. I have blackberries and raspberries. What else? Okay, and then I have a pastry bag so that we can have a little fun. I have some strawberries if I want. And then this is my Trinity syrup I made with the Trinity bitters and the lemon simple syrup. Simple syrup is so high in sugar that it doesn't go bad. And this was made on March 5th and it's still good. And I've been using it for tea and all kinds of other stuff, but I am going to syrup it. You do not need to syrup American butter cakes. Not the kind that come out of a box, not that high ratio cake that we made. They already have a ton of fat in them, and when you add liquid, you're just ruining the crumb. Rose Levy Barenbaum likes to use like a syringe so that you keep the syrup to a certain amount versus just adding it. And I did do a red velvet cake that a viewer gave me. And in the syrup was gelatin. And that gelatin is to stabilize it when it gets into the cake so it doesn't just mush the crumb. You've worked really hard to get your cake to this stage. If you start throwing syrup on it or not handling it properly, this was baked this afternoon and as soon as it was cool, I wrapped it. If I let it sit on the counter for hours and hours, it would dry out and all the work I just did, all the ingredients would be for naught. It would all be ruined. I was at work one day and someone said, I'm so excited. I have a cake on the counter cooling, so when I get home, I'm gonna ice it. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be dry. So if you think about every step and think like what this needs to stay moist, what it needs to stay beautiful, you added all this air. I'm bending over backwards trying to get air into the egg whites and into the yolks and everything. Why am I then going to add so much syrup that I end up ruining the beautiful bubbles and crumb that I've created? So this is the Russian buttercream that I made, okay? And I used the Sugarology recipe and it's very yellow. So I wouldn't put this on the outside. It's also very sweet, which I like, but I'm gonna put this on the inside, but I'm gonna play with this just a little bit and let you guys decide what you want to do in terms of what you're going to do with the cake that you're working on in your own way. So I'm going to put, and I'm right-handed, so this is not a cake decorating lesson, but I'm just gonna show you how I would work and kind of finish things. And if you have any questions, we can talk about other stuff now because this is the kind of thing I can do in my sleep. So I take a wet paper towel. You can use a spongy liner for a cabinet, and that'll help things from sliding around on your cake turntable. And this cake turntable is by Wilton, and it was $50 25 years ago. But if you buy one, it will last you your whole life. So if you are interested, you can get an inexpensive turntable made out of plastic, which has really good ball bearings and will do a really good job, or you can invest in this and it will get you many, many years of good use. Sugarology is great, and actually that is the ermine recipe that I'm going to be using because I trust everything she does, I trust, which is saying a lot, because there are a lot of people out there that I just worry are sending you down a wrong path, and it's experimental, and you're going to waste a lot of time and effort. And this is, I mean, there are a lot of people who said they don't like it, it's too sweet and this and that, but if you want, sometimes you need something sweet. Sometimes your cake isn't sweet, so you have to balance it. So when you say one ingredient is too tart or too sweet or too bitter, you have to balance it. Also with texture, it's good to balance things out. So this cake has a very soft, spongy, moist, nice sponge cake. And then maybe we'll have some fruit in it and buttercream. I could do a light whipped cream. I'm not going to, but I could. But I also would love to have a crumble element, but I don't have one. But crunch would be wonderful in this. Okay, so you have any ideas on low glycemic flour that isn't dense like oats? So this gets into almost like recipe testing and gluten-free baking. You can use nut flours, but people are allergic to nuts. You can, anytime you get into what tends to be what's in gluten-free mixes for gluten-free baking, are high glycemic. They are made out of starch, which is sugar. And so, yes, you are looking for other things that are low glycemic. So nuts are always going to be wonderful. I like buckwheat. It's not wheat. You have to verify it's gluten-free. I mean, obviously you always need to check anything if that's important to you. I mean, you can make flours out of quinoa and all kinds of other things. And you just want to read the label and see what the protein content and sugar content is. Making things with less sugar is the most challenging thing in the world. And the best way to do it, instead of looking at erythritol and these other sugar replacements, is look at naturally occurring ingredients that have the properties of bulk, moisture, and then that's where like gluten-free baking is really going to be your friend. You have to like balance the moisture. That's why a lot of vegan baking has like pumpkin puree in it or applesauce. This has water in it that gives you some leavening properties. So you have to think about the ingredients, and if you lack in one area, you have to make up for it in another. So if you swap out flour and you're using nut powder and then it gets dense, well, you're gonna have to add some moisture or something for leavening, whether that's more baking powder or soda or something like applesauce or a puree of, pumpkin or something like that. That water is gonna give you leavening power. So if you are making a sponge cake without any fat in it, I would not use spray or any kind of fat around the edge of the pan. It needs to grip onto the side of the pan in order to grow. If you give it fat, it's going to be too slippery and it won't be able to. If it's shrinking, and I'm not quite sure, I can't diagnose everything, but perhaps, you incorporated and made these air cells so quickly that they deflated quickly. They aren't a stable emulsion. They're not a stable egg foam. So think about those two things. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of this frosting on here. And I'm going to put the cake on here. And I am actually going to peel, should I? Some people will peel this top layer off, and you just need to do this, and I'm going to do it. So you don't ever want to put a syrup on top of this exterior crumb part of your cake. You want to put it on the crumb. So you can either tort the cake horizontally, which I'm going to do, or you can do what I'm doing and peel this part off. You just do it with your hands. I'm just going to make a mess because then I'm going to work like I normally do. And then you can just clean up the stand. So I'm just rubbing it gently and getting this off. And so now I can see the cells of the cake and all the air bubbles. When I check my cake, I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. So, this isn't too dark. And maybe I shouldn't change the temp, but I'm going to because I want to test it. All right, so I'm going to pull this off, all of this, and I will look at the screen again. So you can do a couple things to keep the moisture in your cake. I could take buttercream and seal it up right now. I could take my puree, or I could use a syrup. But you really need to get something on here immediately because this just begins to deteriorate and dry out like now, okay? You never ever cut the sides of the cake unless you are making a sculpted cake, and you would only do that once it was crumb coated and refrigerated. This is my integrity. This is my integrity. If I cut this and I start stacking it, you're gonna get splooching and things. This is keeping it together. This is a natural strengthener, okay? So I'm going to, it's the only time I like these is with a little bit of syrup. So for this syrup, I'm just gonna add a little bit and I'm not gonna go overboard. You're not really using a paintbrush to paint it on, you're drizzling it. And I'm looking because I don't want to get too much, but I believe what Rose Levy-Berenbaum says. You should take some kind of a syringe and do exactly the right amount so this doesn't get overdone. So this is just going to add a little bit of moisture, but you never, ever, ever want to go overboard with the syrup. How many minutes do we have? We have 2 minutes left on the cake in the oven, the cakes. So I have some on there, and I could just put my buttercream, but I want to show you what I would do with my puree. This puree is such a wonderful flavor, but I could also mix it into a buttercream. But I'm going to drizzle just a little bit on here, and when you add this, it's not a lot. And I'm going to take and this is almost like the syrup. I'm pressing it into the cells. But this can make your cake very moist, so you just want to add enough so it's basically like a syrup. So if you make a puree, and I have a ton of videos on how to make puree from frozen fruit, that's just like the syrup, except it's a puree. Very intense flavor, very red. If you add this to any buttercream, it's going to give you wonderful color and wonderful flavor. So maybe I'll leave it off because I'm going to do another one. Okay. So the oven is going to ring. It's going to ring ding ding in 1 second, and then I'm going to come back and add some buttercream filling. Why my dark chocolate goes hard when I mix it with heavy cream? It could be temperature. Is it because so maybe what you need to do is instead of adding the chocolate to the cream, because it's cold, you've got like melted and then you have cold. Those two things are not going to emulsify or go together because they're not going to like each other, right? Temperature. But, all right, let's go check on my cake. We're going to look at it through the window. Let's see what we're dealing with here. Look at that. Can you see? I don't want to open the oven. I really want to leave these undisturbed. They've raised quite a bit. They're turning a little bit brown. If I bang on that, there's a chance they could deflate. So we don't want it to deflate. So when you're trying to add chocolate to cream, you might want to add a little bit of it, just like I did. If you were here when I mixed these things together, you saw that I took some of the batter and added it to the butter. You might want to add a little bit of the whipped cream to the bulk of the butter. I'm sorry. A little of the whipped cream to the bulk of the chocolate, and then add that to the whipping cream in thirds. So you have to think about how can I introduce them to each other and get to know each other a little bit. That's why we temper a hot something over eggs, just a little bit, and then put it back in to cook it, because we're bringing this temperature up. Otherwise, we get cooked eggs. So if you've watched any of my on glaze or anything lately, it's all temperature, emulsion, trying to get things to go together. Okay, good. So this is what I love, because I'm not giving you recipes or telling you how to do stuff. I'm actually empowering you to think like your ingredients. So I'm going to put just this buttercream in here on this part, and I mixed this together on the paddle earlier. This is my Russian buttercream, so it's soft, and I'm going to add enough that when you cut into this cake, you can see it. Maybe a 1/4 inch thick. Maybe thicker. So I have the raspberry and I have a little bit of the syrup. I wouldn't normally do both, just so you know. And I'm going to push this all the way to the edge. And I want it to be straight. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my cake and make sure that I'm getting it straight. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I was going to torte the cake. I'm still going to do it. I don't care. I don't care. I don't know if I'll be able to. Let's see. So normally I would have my hand on the top of the cake, but I am torting it because I want you to see. This is totally wrong. Do not do what I'm doing. Bad, bad. But I want to get this off. Okay. So I'm going to put this over here. Okay. All right. So I'm going to push this back in the middle. There's my cake. I meant to do that. Okay. So that is not tunneling. Those are bubbles. And they look good. So on here, I'm going to put a little raspberry. Just instead of the syrup, I'm not going to do the syrup. Just enough to fill in the holes and get moisture. Oh shoot, I didn't do the timer. I'm going to check it in 5 minutes. A timer does not tell you that your cakes are done. It tells you something's in the oven. So it's a reminder. So don't ever think that when someone tells you something takes 35 minutes, that it's going to take exactly 35 minutes, because everyone's oven is different. And you have to look for signs of doneness and learn to trust yourself and not assume that that timer is going to tell you when it's done. Do those purees work in place of store-bought ones for making ganaches and such? This fruit puree, like in what way? For adding flavor? A store-bought puree could be a few things. It could have a lot of sugar in it. You have to read the ingredients. Does it have the actual fruit pulp? Like, does it have actual fibers and fruit in it? Or is it just liquid? Does it have sugar or no sugar? Yes, trusting yourself when you do all this stuff. It's about building intuition. That's why I recommend that you take notes. It's why I recommend that you plan ahead, because all of that is a process that helps you predict outcomes. And when you predict outcomes, you are in control of the process. You are involved. You are not just doing someone else's recipe. When you are filling a cake, you need to imagine what it's going to look like when it is cut. So when I add this here, I know when I cut into this cake that it's gonna look good, because you know how sometimes people have, like, the cakes are like that and then they fill it with so much icing and you end up getting a wonky, ugly piece? You have to imagine how it's going to look. So I want this and that to be the same thickness. I want it to look nice when I cut this cake. All right? So I'm going to push this buttercream all the way to the edge. And if I add fresh fruit to a cake, I'm not going to add it on the bottom, because then it's all going to get mushed. I'm going to add it more toward the top. And if I add a fruit, I'm not going to add the soft ones first. I'm going to add, like, let's say blackberries, because they're more firm, and then more of the soft, mushy kind, the raspberry. And if I'm going to do a strawberry, I don't want to put like big slices, really thick slices, so that you're eating your piece of cake with a fork and you get a huge chunk. So you might want to dice it. So you need to think about, what is the fork going to do? What is this going to look like on my plate? And you need to make it look nice and be palatable. Now, I wish I had crunch, because that's what this needs. So I have cake with a little raspberry puree and buttercream. Cake, raspberry puree, buttercream. I'm going to tort this. I'm going to tort this cake so I will have one more place to put stuff. Now I have passion cream and I have lemon cream. I'm going to put the lemon cream on here, lemon. Because I think lemon, and I think I'll do raspberry. And I don't want whatever I'm using. Do you see how nice and thick that is? That's a lemon cream. If you're using a lemon curd, or if this is runny, it's going to run right out of your cake. So you need to make sure that you are using, I don't want to use a dam. I'm not going to make a dam. I don't need to. I just need to pay attention that this is nice and firm. And you have to either cook your curd thicker, cook more moisture out of it, or make sure that you're using the right recipe. And that's all stuff you plan in advance. Okay, so that looks like the buttercream. That's going to taste great. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this down here. And I'm going to tort my cake properly this time. Would praline work as a crunch? Absolutely. I mean, I have fouilletine and I have crumble that needs to be baked in the fridge. Yes, I could toast coconut. I could have nuts that I've toasted. I mean, any crunch would be great. Any crunch would be great. And it should have crunch. Now, lemon and raspberry is a very popular flavor. If you are doing a cake for a large group, that's what I suggest. Very popular. I used to do wedding cakes. Let's see how you make the creams that I just am talking about. I have videos on my profile page. So we are making the sponge cake, a French sponge cake. Sorry, let me open up. These look a good color, but what I want to do is touch them. And what should happen is it should bounce back. So that's looking pretty good to me. I think these are going to come out. And I am going to go put this over here so you can watch me take them out. The creams that I made, and in on glaze, all live on videos I just made recently. So I'm going to put my cakes over here to cool. I'm going to show you off. Okay. Now, a lot of times people think I do things too dark. This is not too dark. It's done. And when you press on a cake with your finger, it should bounce back. It should not sink instead. So I'm going to keep an eye on those because I don't want them to spend too much time in there. But I'm going to pull the crumb off of here. I'm going to torte this and I'm going to finish this cake. And there are a lot of steps that high-end cake makers do that are somewhat seemingly wasteful, but they do make for a perfect cake. Some people don't even use the bottom of the cake. Some people make these cakes 2 to 3 inches tall and then torte them twice. But I'm going to show you how to torte this properly. That's why I took it off the cake. I don't want to torte it on there because I don't want to press down and compress the fillings and smush them out to the side. So I am taking this off for aesthetic reasons and practical reasons. Let me just get this done. This is not a great look when you cut into a cake, and it's also not a texture I love. Okay, so I'm going to pull this cake up. There we go. Is there yeah, there's carryover cooking. It's cooking still. That's why I want to get it out of the pan as soon as I possibly can. It is still cooking, so I'm keeping an eye on it. And I'm pretty good at handling cakes because I've done it for so long. But you want it right in between when it's still hot and not going to fall apart. So you should be able to flip it out, and I will show you. It's going to pop right out. The difference between a sponge and a regular cake. A regular cake, if you're talking about like an American butter cake, like our high yield cake, is really high in fat. This is low in fat, and this has more fat than most sponge cakes. And the other ones have leaveners, chemical leaveners like baking soda or baking soda. This has none of that. It's just air that we whip into the egg white and the egg yolk separately. So I'm going to put this on the side of the cake and slide it back and forth while turning the stand. And I'm not going through the cake until I'm all the way around. And then even then, as I go through the center, I'm sliding the knife and letting the knife do the job. Okay, so this is going to go on here. And then I'm going to switch it back onto here. And the whole time I've got my mind on the cake over there. I haven't forgotten the cake. But I know I'm going to give it another minute or two. Okay, so look at this. Doesn't that look good? Okay, so I can already tell when you cut into this that we're building a really straight cake just by the silhouette. And that if you can imagine that this, when the edge is going to be kind of pretty. It's not going to be all jaggedy and janky, right? I'm going to get my knife out of here and clean up a little bit. I'm going to put a little raspberry in here. It looks great. Oh, I think it looks really good. I don't want too much of this. It'll make it mushy and it'll ruin the crumb. But I'm using my little 4-inch offset to press the puree into the cake cells. Instead of syrup and only because this cake does not have the fat that an American butter cake has. So it is, by nature, it's a little drier than the higher fat American cake. So I could either put just lemon cream on here and raspberries, or I could put a tiny bit of Swiss buttercream and then this. Which do you guys think I should do? Swiss, then the lemon. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to put the Swiss in here and give it, I'm gonna pull my cake out too. So I'm gonna work quick. I'm gonna go like this. Boom, boom. My cakes are ready to come out. There we go. So my buttercreams, because we made them recently, were in the freezer. And this is looking good. So I'm using these up. Nothing goes to waste. Even if I don't eat something, it's going to go in the freezer and be used later. Okay, so that's going to get reconstituted on the paddle. And I'm just going to do it on low to start. And I'm going to show you my cake. So this cake is pulled away from the edges. You can see that. It's pretty hot still. It's still sticking just a tiny bit. So I'm going to leave it to cool just another second. Okay, there we go. There is the little bit of parchment. These gloves. Okay. Flip it over and put it on. Does that look good? Nice edges. It's sturdy. It can handle being handled, which is great. So obviously my pan was hot enough that it was hot, but on the other hand, I can pick it up. So that this one's pretty hot. I'm gonna give it 1 more minute. It should pop out, and that is not because it's stuck. That's temperature. So I'm gonna give it a sec. You use sugar syrup to keep it moist. I did. I put it on the first layer, and this is a sponge cake, so you can use a sugar syrup on a sponge. But I would not use a sugar syrup on an American butter cake. There's too much fat, and it's the wrong combination. It's unnecessary. So this is a Swiss buttercream that I made a while ago. It's been in the freezer, and it's got a little vanilla in it, and it's very neutral flavor. So I'm going to use a little bit, and then I'm going to put the raspberries. And then I'm going to put the top of the cake on. I'm going to give it a crumb coat, and then I'm going to pipe and do a little bit. Well, this buttercream I'm just refreshing, so like just until it's loose. So I'm not making it right now. I'm just refreshing it, and I would just take a couple minutes. All right. And you're just, you know, it gets like dense with gravity, and the air that you built up into it a while ago is going to be affected by not only gravity, but by the nature of it. So I'm going to put, I want it to sort of match these. However, I'm going to have raspberries, so it doesn't need to be as tall. So let me see. So this is a completely different color, and that's why I like adding French buttercream and the Russian buttercream. The ones that are richer should be a filling. This light Swiss buttercream is just wonderful from the outside. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I don't want this buttercream to be a huge layer. I want it to be a barrier to the cake so that the raspberries can sit on it. So I'm going to go all the way to the edge, but it's not super thick, but it is even. It's kind of like a moisture barrier, so if the raspberries break down, they're not going to compromise the cake. Does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to take this cake out of here, and I want you to watch how I do it. It's still very hot, but I'm going to turn it over, and I'm not banging it. I'm like letting gravity, and I can feel exactly where it's sticking with my hand. Okay, there we go. It's sticking in one spot. There we go. There's the little guy. And you can make this bigger. You just don't want it to go up the edges because you really need the edges of this cake to stay nice and sturdy. Do you see that? It doesn't have a ton of smell, but it's soft, sturdy, and it's gonna dry out really fast. So I'm gonna let it cool, but then I'm gonna wrap it before it has time to dry out. So you do not want to wrap it while it's warm, because all that will do is ruin the crumb. All that moisture that you just cooked out will then be reintroduced through the steaming and evaporation of the cooling process. So you don't want to do that. Why does your cake never have a good crumb? It could be a lot of things. What kind of cake are you talking about? All right, so I'm going to take these raspberries. What kind of cake is it? I don't use salted butter in my kitchen. If I need to add salt, I will. That helps avoid mix-ups. And I like to control the amount of salt. And so I don't, because every manufacturer is different. I don't have the time to figure all that out. And I've had people accidentally use salted butter, and we've tried fixing the buttercream and you can't. So you can add as much salt as you like. That Russian buttercream is really good because it has a good high, sodium count. So you want to take a raspberry. This is the bottom and this is the top. And you want to stand them upright. That's where they have their best structure. If you put them on their side, they get mushed. And if you do it this way, they get mushed. So you want to do them upside down. And I always start in the middle and I go around, and I do not wash my raspberries. They don't need to be. And if you do, you are introducing way too much water, and that might be fine if you're just eating them or doing a salad. But if you're putting them into a cake, that's terrible. It's going to be terrible. And these are already a little bit soggy, but that's okay. So you want them close together. There's nothing worse than thinking you put a bunch of raspberries into a cake, and when you cut into it, it looks like there are none. And that's what happens if you don't do a generous amount. And I don't want to use any that are mushy. So I think I'm going to finish with the blackberry. But you want to look for firm, nice, even size. You don't want some being one size and all the rest different. So everything should be even. And these should go almost all the way to the edge. Why does my cake never have a good vanilla cake? It could be too dry. Are you talking about like just egg whites? Because dryness comes from either maybe over whipping. It can come from lack of moisture, either in, the egg product if you don't have yolk, because fat gives you nice tender crumb and it gives you moisture. So it could be a couple things. And, I say if the recipe's not good, move on. It's not your job to fix a bad recipe. A bad recipe is like a bad book. You need to just stop reading it. Move on to a different one. There's plenty of good recipes out there and a lot of bad recipes. So if a recipe's bad, don't start recipe testing unless you can explain every ingredient and what your swap is doing and why. Like, you have to be able to argue why a swap is okay specifically. And if you can't, then you need to find a different recipe. And I really like to use reputable recipe developers. I don't have the time or money to waste on people. I don't know how these people make 10 recipes a day. And I mean, are the recipes all good? And then if you're reading comments and the recipes aren't good, move along. Okay, so that is a good amount, but I'm gonna finish this with some more. Some more. I've even tried multiple recipes, but always tough. Is whole eggs. Well, you might be over whipping. You know how I talked about adding, when you whip your egg whites, if you go too far and you remove too much of the moisture, then, so I'm not gonna just plunk this on. I'm going to take my blackberry, and actually these are huge, so I'm gonna cut them into 4 pieces, and then I'm gonna add them toward the edge. And I don't know that this is going to look bad because I have a nice round circle. So again, I'm thinking about when it's sliced, what's it going to look like from the outside. So it'll go from red in the middle to the blackberries around the edges. So remember when you're adding these berries, how they're going to feel when you bite into them, how they're going to cut through with a fork. Think about all of that before you just go adding something. That's why I'm not just taking a blackberry and sticking it on. That would be silly. But a dry cake, if you're doing everything right, in terms of you follow the recipe, you've scaled it properly, everything's right, I would wonder if you're either baking it too long or if you are whipping the moisture out of the cake before it even gets into the pan. That would be my concern. That would be where I would look for an answer. And also, and I can't stress this enough, if you don't get this thing covered right the moment that it cools, not when it's warm and not when it's been sitting there for, you know, half an hour beyond drying out, but you want to lock in what lives in there. You're not creating moisture by using, you know, a warm cake. You are just holding it in. You're just keeping it homeostasis, right? I did use the simple syrup for this sponge cake, but I would not use simple syrup on American butter cakes. That is overkill. It's not the right thing to do. And most people add too much syrup anyway, so you need to, you know, think about just the right amount and what the purpose is. And a sponge cake is the perfect time to use a syrup because they are drier. That's the whole point. That's the point of them. They're light, they're sturdy, they hold up to all the handling, and they serve a purpose, but they can tend to be drier. So a syrup is a good thing, but you don't want to just add so much moisture that you end up gumming it up. You know what? This is going to be so pretty, and I do get to eat this. I'm excited. All right, let's see. So I am tucking these in because I'm going to go almost all the way to the edge, but not all the way because I don't want these leaking out of the edge. And I'm going to seal it in with my buttercream. So these pieces are a little harder. They're like a bigger, more mature, textured berry. So I'm going to chop them up a little smaller. If nature didn't give me what I need, then I need to think about it and fix it. Okay, I think that looks good. So I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff on my table. And I want to show you what I've got going on here because it's kind of fun. Now some people will take like a lemon cream and dollop it on there, but I believe that you are just going to end up weighing down your cake and having it smush out the edges. And a lot of that you just learn the hard way. This cake is on fire. So I'm going to eat these strawberries tomorrow with what is left of my passion cream. Woo, the best. The best. Good cheese. A bunch of you asked about the passion fruit because apparently you guys are all lucky and you can get it in your neighborhoods. Here's all I have to say. Just make sure that you look at it, see what the solid count is, and see how much sugar's in it because you want to make sure, and taste it. Because mine has 0 sugar. So the recipe is built for one that has 0 sugar. So just keep that in mind. The passion fruit cream I made the other day, and I have a video on it, and it's in my fridge. It's still left over. It's so good. Here's what I'm gonna do. This is my top, and this is what my cake looks like, okay? After I torted it, I'm gonna flip it over and put it on here. Would you look at that? Look how straight. And at this point, what I wanna do is take my hands, and I wanna look and see that everything is even, because when you're nice and straight here, and then you start adding more, you end up with a straighter cake. So at every stage, you want to make sure. So I'm going to make sure it's straight, and then I'm going to just cover it with my, because I don't have a ton of buttercream. I did think about using the American. It's in the freezer, but I was like, you know what? I just want to use the European. It's so much nicer. All right. So if you were to crumb cake, you would just do a really thin coat, and you would make sure to get the buttercream into all the cracks and crevices and all the pores of the cake to keep it from drying out. It is like an emollient. It's like putting lotion on your skin and making sure that you fill in your pores. The cake has pores, just like your skin, and you want to fill them in. But I'm going to go ahead and just finish this. I don't know if I'll have enough, so I have a bowl here. And I'm just going to do this, and it's not really a demo because it's not on the schedule to be demoed, but you can watch and if you have questions. So I'm going to ice this really fast. I'm going to let you guys watch. Blackberries. Okay, so this is going to go on top. All right, so I'm going to fill up all the crevices so it's nice, stays nice and moist. I might have to dig out some more icing. But the trick is to make sure that you fill every crack and crevice because you don't want the air. This is like a sponge. It is a sponge. But it's going to soak up the odors in the refrigerator and it's going to dry out if you don't seal it up with a good amount of icing. Ooh. All right. Tell you what, I used to ice cakes all the time. It's so tiring on your arms, it's crazy. Okay. I'm not doing a crumb coat. I'm just gonna do a finish coat because I'm not doing this for anything. And I just want to be able to eat it tomorrow. So I'm going to try to cover it tonight just with one single coat. It doesn't need to be perfect because I'm not selling it or taking it anywhere. But I absolutely need to cover this cake so that it does not dry out. So even if I want to call this a crumb coat, which I totally could, then I would want to finish it tomorrow. But between now and tomorrow, it's perfectly safe in the refrigerator because it's going to be covered. And the definition of a crumb coat and a finish coat is a finish coat looks good, but they should both be comprehensive and covering the whole cake. I mean, for sure. Woohoo, now I'm going to wrap my cakes soon. I don't want them to dry out, do I? I wish I could see all of you. All right. So I'm going to clean this up, then I'm going to check my other cakes. Yeah, I mean, I'm good at doing a crumb coat and then coming back later and finishing it, which I absolutely could. So that is kind of like a crumb coat. Maybe I should do that. And maybe I should pull some more icing out of the freezer to finish it tomorrow. But I can show you how I do my petals really quick. All right. Okay. All right, let me check my cakes. They still have a tiny bit of heat in them, and what you want to do is pick it up. Now I think I could wrap these. You want to just use your hands because your hands know best if there's any heat in here. But if I were to wrap this in plastic and it got any humidity, I would open it back up. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes. All right, well maybe, do you guys want me to make it look a little cleaner? And then what I have are all these sugar petals. You know how I do the sugar petal cakes? I usually just have deli cups full of sugar petals, and I could just kind of show you as we close out the live. Okay, also, how much do I have in there? Yeah, it's just not the right amount to make this cake look perfect. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to put my icing in here, and I'm going to cover this cake with petals so you won't even see this. I have a bag with a star tip all ready to go, so I'm just going to cover the cake. Go. I hate putting baked goods in the fridge because they end up having a fridge smell. I agree, and I have a separate kitchen, so I don't have that problem, but I agree with you 1000%. And pastry chefs, that's all they do. Everything you pick up, you're like, everything you have to smell. So yes, they are sponges. They will gather every smell in the fridge. And the only reason I'm going to refrigerate this is because you have to go with your least common denominator. The weakest chain in this link are the raspberries and the cream. It has to be refrigerated, so it has to go in the fridge. But you absolutely want to eat it at room temperature as well, though, because nothing tastes good. No baking. But no, generally, you guys all know I don't like the fridge. I make them. I was a gum paster for years. I had a cake business. So these are like sunflower petals. Oh, these are for sure. I make sculptures and all kinds of stuff. I've done a lot of this if you go look at my profile page. If you don't have a place to put the cake and it has to go in the fridge because you have lemon curd and raspberries in there, then you need to take out anything that smells bad. Or this can go in a container that's airtight. But my fridge has no smells in it. I have no savory food in my fridge. It has no odor, and I'm very sensitive to odor. So you can't get rid of it unless you remove it from the refrigerator. Most home fridges are a problem. They're a problem. So what you can do is make this cake. Like I could make it, let's say I was serving it on Friday. I could wrap this cake that I made tonight. These cakes right here. I'm going to wrap them. Wrap them up, and then I could, on Friday morning, assemble the cake, and then it could sit at room temperature for the day. I could adjust my production schedule so that it never goes in the refrigerator. That's something you can do. It's a little bit harder, but it's totally doable. So I'm going to put my cake into plastic. And here it is. It's spongy. It's nice and sturdy. If I were going to freeze it, I wouldn't refrigerate this. This does not go in the fridge. If I wanted to keep it long term in the freezer, I would wrap it twice, label it, and then it would go in the freezer. And I might even put it in a container or another bag to keep any smells or air out, because you want to protect it from those smells. A commercial refrigerator is infinitely more effective than our home refrigerators. It has a better regeneration, filtration, airflow. It's colder. I mean, I have a teeny tiny little freezer in the other room, and I know for sure that if I put stuff in there, it's going to be there. It just freezes way harder than this freezer. Depending on what your outcome goals are, you're going to have to mitigate that kind of thing, and it's not easy. That's one main takeaway from you I learned. You don't have to start and complete. Absolutely, you don't have to start anything. Every single bakery you like, every restaurant uses refrigeration and freezer for their production schedule, and that's why freezing things in their raw state is very helpful. But, you know, in the places that I've worked with cakes, not my personal cakes, but in a commercial setting, thank you, these cakes get baked and then they go on sheet pans and get wrapped tight and they go in the freezer and then they're pulled. That's why when you go to Walmart, grocery stores, and most bakeries, those cakes are shipped in frozen. They thaw them and put them together. It's not a bad thing because their freezers work. They're completely different than your home freezer. Yeah, I imagine changing an air filter would help, not overfilling your freezer, making sure that you don't push all your stuff up against the back where the filtration's occurring. You know, a lot of people have freezers that are chock full, and that's not a good thing either. So I'm just going to cover this up, and then I'm going to show you what I do with the with my little petals there. I fill my bag up full. And when I cake decorated, I was not the queen of piping. I was the queen of sugar flowers. And you can see some of my work. Let's see. I think there are some videos. I mean, I had a very successful high-end cake business where I did all sugar flowers, and I specialized in very realistic looking flowers and natural touches. All right, I think what I will do, I'm not going to do anything. Okay, so we can just talk and then I will get going. Let's see what questions you guys. I'll cut the cake tomorrow. We're going to cut it tomorrow. All right, maybe I'm going to use little, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to take off my gloves because I can't, they're all sweaty. And so basically I would have more icing on here, and I use different size petals, and I have all these theories. But if you guys are interested in making these petal cakes, because I've done a bunch of, I love them because you can do these. I'm going to do one for Pride Month. I'm going to do a rainbow. And it's going to start out in the middle and then do the whole rainbow around. I'm going to do really vibrant. And so it'll be just like the ones, I have like a pink and a green one on my profile page, and it's going to be super cute, and I'll put it to music. So you just add them and you go around the circle, and you start with little in the middle and they get bigger as they go out, just like a natural flower does. And in the center of a flower, it's usually darker, and petals, like on a rose, get lighter as they go out. And you just go in a circle until it's covering the whole cake. People have said, oh, they wish I would do this in real time, but it takes like 30 minutes. And I'm not even doing an insane, I'm very fussy. I take a lot of time to do pretty much everything, unless I'm demoing, and then I try to keep it moving along. And white looks boring, but when these all get on here, the texture is amazing. Why do I refer to sucrose? Number one, that's how I was trained. Number two, it's very specific, and that might sound silly if you're thinking about the home, but when I teach you as if we were in a professional class learning to be professional bakers. And in that way, you want everything in the kitchen to be simple and obvious. You don't want confusion. And you just when you think like, why does she say sucrose? And then someone says, oh, but what kind of sugar? Imagine the sugars I had in my bake shop. From coconut sugar to maple sugar to all the erythritols and all those other sugars. And again, I was trained that way. That's how I was trained. But on the other hand, it makes sense when you have a lot of sugars in the kitchen. So for some of you might think, oh, it's overkill, we're all home bakers. But the information I'm giving you is not for home bakers. The information I am giving you is literally professional information. And I don't know why more books are not written this way. I don't know why you have to pay to go to school to get this information. You should not have to. This information, there's not like home bakers and baking. It's all the same thing. And when you are on day one in a professional program, they talk to you like professionals and you're only on day one. There's like no difference. You just started. So I treat you guys the exact same way I would treat my professional seeking students, and no different. And it's just a shorthand. And that way, if I say coconut sugar, you know that it's significant. And I think that, you know, who knows? Some people think it's annoying. I don't know what to say. I don't mean to be annoying. Exactly. It's not invert, it's not glucose. Like what kind? I mean, there are so many. In fact, I mean, I've worked in kitchens where everyone calls a chocolate the name, like guanaja, Curta guanaja. This one gets this one gets that. Like there are so many specific names in the bake shop. So anyway, well, I mean, this is it. This could go on for another 30 minutes here. And then eventually these will go on the edge and then all the way around. So I'll reveal this cake tomorrow. Maybe I'll put it in my story. But I make these and I love them, and they don't get 1 million views or anything, but I mean, I love them so much, and I choose the same song. And I kid you not, when I make the video and then I add the song, it like literally all goes together. And I don't know if that's AI or what, but it's like perfect timing every single time. It's unbelievable. So it is really fun. I enjoy this. So I'm going to do tons of these petal cakes. They are the easiest thing to do. And you can either roll gum paste out and just punch all the leaves. All you need is like a cutter. Or you can do like I do. And just so you know, in my business, I rolled out my gum paste for freaking 12 years. And when I learned how to use my pasta part for my KitchenAid, mind blown. So way faster. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it the old-fashioned way, because I did. It's probably why I ruined my wrists, my hands. So these are really small. So then once I get the center of it, then I just start picking the larger ones. And these are longer. These are like sunflower. Have you guys seen my sculptures I do, like the sugar sculptures? See how long these are compared to the other ones? So then I start getting bigger. And whenever you add petals, you want them to crisscross when you add them. Like they should be off center. That's how roses are. Oops, other way. And you want to create movement. And when I make them, if they're like wrinkly or curled or crooked, it just does nothing but make it more interesting. So obviously I would cover the cake with more icing, but I can put these petals all the way around. You won't even know. And gum paste is not the best in the refrigerator, but if you're not battling like a ton of humidity, yeah, it makes the cake crunchy, and I don't like it actually. I pick it off, to be honest, but who cares? Let me see if I can find a broken one. Can you hear them? They're very brittle, and you can ask moderator Dave. When you make sugar flowers and you start adding them to a cake, it's really hard because they're not like flowers. They don't bend. and they crack, and that sound is like, it's like soul crushing. You have to make so many more flours than you need. And Dave used to just cringe. It's crunchy. They're definitely crunchy. Look, I won't even waste one petal. I was trained well. Here. See? Brittle. So little kids always eat these, and it's just sugar and some other ingredients. Not gonna hurt you. They're bland, sweet. Gum paste you can buy from, who do I buy from? I didn't used to buy gum paste. I was like morally opposed. Oh my gosh, it's so expensive, and that's true, and you should make it from scratch. However, because I hardly ever use it, I buy it. I think it's satin ice. And Maggie Austin's the one who got me to switch, and it is flexible, it dries quickly, but if it's super humid, you just can't do gum paste work. You just can't. I've tried. Sugar's gonna sugar, it wins every time. You're not gonna beat sugar. You're not going to beat the sugar. It's going to soak up the humidity and fall apart. In the summertime, my gum paste doesn't even dry. You guys are going to get me to do this whole thing just by being all quiet and nice over there. Wouldn't it be cool if I could hear you? We had like, and I could listen and work and just have conversations with you guys all day. Because I work all day by myself, all alone. These have a tip and a square part on the bottom. That's the bottom, and then I make ridges before they dry. But I've done a ton of videos. You guys can go watch them, and I would love to see a bunch of petal cakes coming up for spring. And you want to go, so let's say this was all pink. Your darkest pinks would be in the center, and then it would get lighter and larger. So if you buy one cutter, a rose cutter, get a couple sizes. Start with your small guys in the center. Just like a rose opens up and the outside ones are the biggest. Study a rose. Pull a rose apart. That's what I used to do. If I had a new flower I had to work on, I would go buy it or find it out in nature. I would tear it apart and dissect it, and then I would make it. So it really started out of my love of gardening and flowers. And then I ended up being I found the Scott Clark Woolly book in the library. And I'm not joking, I could not sleep. I couldn't sleep for months. And even for years, it took me until I could get all these designs I would see. I'd be like, I'd have to do them to get them out of my head. And as I worked through my career, I calmed down. Like I got some of my ideas out. But it's addictive. I love flowers. I think they're beautiful. I love nature. And I have ladybug cakes I made so many cool things. Not even funny. I did it for years, more than a decade. All right, let's see if I can get this going. So you can make these petals as large or small as you want. You know what? You could make them with chocolate chip centers and then make these petals in a golden yellow and have like a sunflower cake. I mean, this is your most basic gum paste decoration. And you could go to town. You could make mums, zinnias, dahlias, sunflowers, daisies. It's all the same petal, just a little bit different. Some are ruffly, some are, and I would put in a ton more. More is more. I would put in a ton more. I'm going really fast. But you know what? Sometimes, I'll tell you what, it used to take me hours to put the lights on our Christmas tree, and then one year I did not have the time. 1 year, and I was in my 40s, and I'm obsessive, and I was like, I don't have time for this, I got to get it done. And because I would get like inside the tree and it would all be even. I use all white, but they're all different textures. And do you know what? That tree looked just as good. So I never took that much time again. I was like, forget it. It wasn't worth it. So, you know, I'm not taking as much time as I usually do, but you know what? Maybe this thing will look just perfectly fine. And these are edible, and so you want to treat them just like food. You don't want to let them get dirty or not be covered. Oh, here's a rose petal. There's one rose petal. See how it's different than the sunflower petal? It was satin ice. Satin Ice is a nice stretchy gum paste. I never liked it because it was too soft and I thought it was expensive, but I went through a lot of gum paste when I was gum pasting. But it actually dries pretty quick if it's not humid. Satin Ice you can get on Amazon and you can get it in bright colors, but I don't love their colors. I use food color paste and get a much, like if you buy the red, it's like a weird red. And even if you lighten it by adding more white gum paste. So if if you want to do this and you want some, like when I do the rainbow cake, I'm going to buy the colors because you can't add enough food coloring to make a bright green, a bright purple, a bright blue. I'm just going to buy them. But if you're going for pastels, just use a paste, like a gel or a paste in your gum paste and add a tiny bit at a time. And if it's going to lighten when it dries, so you want to make it dark. But if you need to lighten it up, you just add more gum paste. That's how you lighten gum paste if you went overboard. You just make more. So you start out dark in the center of your flower and you work your way out to lighter, larger petals. All right, so these aren't going to be the right size, so I'm going to go with the little guys on the edge. All right, so you want to see the top? Is anyone still there? Have I lost you all? Okay, so that's what the top looks like, and I'm going to spin it. Okay, so you guys all, I want to see this. And I'm not joking. If you do this, please send it to me. I want to see. Email me or make a video and tag me. I want to see what you're doing. This isn't how you do it. You do it much neater and much slower. I'll have 80. There's still 80 people. Hello. I'm just talking to myself. So you don't really, this should have had more icing in it because then you won't see the cake through it and it will look a lot better. But again, like I said, we're just winging it here. And it's good to use up the ingredients even if I don't have enough to cover the cake. Like at least I know this isn't going to go to waste. Dave can take it to work and share it and people will like it and I'll get to taste it. And I don't know if you guys saw how I transport a cake, but I basically turn a round container upside down and put the cake on the lid. And that gives it a nice flat surface to get you wherever you're going and keeps it clean and safe because you really should not travel if you are sharing a cake with strangers with a cake just like out in the open. It should be covered. Especially if you're selling cakes or doing any professional work, you should not be just putting it in your car without any kind of safety cover. All right, so I want this to go over the edge. I think that looks the best. Working as fast as I can. Ugh. And these will stick. And more icing, and if it were cold, actually it's kind of hard to stick the delicate ones into a very, very cold cake. So then what I'll do is I'll take the curly Q ones, and those will be the ones, those will be the ones that I kind of put on the edge. You see how they stick out and kind of create like a little bit of movement? So as I'm going through, I'm kind of cherry picking, and those will go on their side even a little bit. So you want everything to be off center, every other, crossing over, irregularity, but you want some unifying factor. So irregularity is really great for design, for your eye, but the unifying factor is it's all white. So you can have messy and all white. Or you can have a lot of color and let the color be the statement, but then have it really neat. So you have to pick and choose. Oh yeah. So I typically color the paste, make the petals, and then I powder them. And if you go back to my profile page on the sugar work, you will see that that's exactly what I do because I show you the whole process. And I'll tell you, it's not hard, but it is labor intensive. It's just time consuming. But I'll also tell you that I don't look at anything as a chore. None of this is a chore for me. This is all relaxing. Oops, that's the back. This is all relaxing, and I do it when I have time. And I often do this at night. That's why sometimes you'll see my videos have a different tone. That's because I'm doing it at night. If you give me a pile of petals in a cake, I'm like a beaver. I got to put them on there. I have to do the job, you know. My son was obsessed with beavers when he was little, and I've seen every beaver movie ever made. If you get a chance, Google best damn beaver movie ever. It was at an IMAX. It's epic. epic movie about beavers, and they literally are born needing to stop the flow of running water. That's like their life's mission. And honestly, that's how I feel about some of the stuff that I do. It's just in me. And so rather than fight it, I harness it, and it relaxes me. So don't look at it as a time-consuming pursuit. Look at it as something you get to do that's relaxing, but you have to set yourself up or you won't find flow. Because if you're frustrated or don't have enough of something or haven't planned enough, you're going to create frustration, which is the opposite of flow. I don't like doing anything in a rush. And if people are going to rush me, I'm like, I don't want to do it. So not to say that I work slow or I don't get stuff done, but if something's just for pleasure, I don't want someone ruining it by making me hurry. I don't like races. I've already told you guys, I don't like those shows where everything is like a race or a competition. It just makes me feel like I'm going to die. I don't like it. I like to be able to relax and enjoy the process and lean into it. That's really that's what I like doing. All right, so then I could take these white ones, and there are food colorings. I don't know if you've seen like the pearlized kind. So you could pearlize these in pink pearls and ivory pearl, undertones of blues, and make it silvery. I mean, it doesn't need to be colored. But the dusting, so the gel or the paste is going to go in the dough before you make it. And then when it dries, then you're going to take a powder, and I save my brushes. These are specifically, see how they're all mushed? These are specifically so that I can take a powder and put it onto a dry petal. So see, that has green on it. And there's just something stuck on here, just left over. See? Oh, there it is. And this is how you do it. First of all, it should be 3 colors, and I always like one of them to be yellow, and the yellow kind of goes down here because it's the sun. But if you take the side of your paintbrush and go, and this is all dry, just dry powder left over. See how I did it on the side and it made an outline? That's one way to do it. Or you can just make some lines, or you can just do part of it. Like this has green on it already. Can you see the green? Let me see. And that's a very muddy green. I like muddy colors, and then I would take the pink, and you have to think like nature, like in a V. And look at how that looks like a petal. Anyway, it's definitely one of the loves of my life. To do this for a living, you have to live in an area where you can charge a lot of money, because you won't make any money. You will spend, and if you guys look at, I did a Neiman Marcus product, and I did all of those decorations in the summer because I didn't know how many orders I would get, and we set a limit at 500. And if you look at my designs, I mean, I spent months making those things. I made gum paste teddy bears. One was toys, gum paste teddy bear, Jack in the Box. Those were elaborate. A little ball. I made trumpets. I learned how to make everything, and I had a blast. And then I sold them all, and it was amazing. But sometimes I look at that project and I think, how in the world? Now, do you see how I'm turning these outward and it's starting to get like on the edge? So I'm glad to use up these petals. Thanks, you guys. But now I'm starting to turn them outward. See how I'm putting them on their side? And I could cover the whole cake. Now, the only thing I don't like about this is if you look in here, like I would have them closer together and you wouldn't be able to see the cake. But that's just because I was hurrying. All right, so see how I'm putting them sideways? And now they're like moving, and movement, that's what you want. You want movement. A cake should never be flat on the table. It should have movement and dynamic lines. It should create excitement. Cake should never be put in the corner. It should be center of the party, especially if you spend a lot of money on it. I've had people like move sculptures so that we can put a cake where their sculptures in the lit part of their beautiful homes go. So you should think about cakes as very, very versatile, and they should become a centerpiece. Again, especially if you put a lot of time or money into them. All right, so you can see how I'm covering up the cake. You can't even see that it doesn't have icing. So that's cool. And then I really like all these curly ones. Oh, that one's going to fall. Oops. So I think I need a sideways one here. There we go. Cover up that part. And if they're broken, it's not a big deal. I've got no icing to stick that in. It's just cake. I could take some in the bag and do that, but I'm just gonna keep it moving. No, I'm not. I'm not, because I can't. So I can stick the flowers into this, because it's not going in the cake. The cake is too firm, which it should be. So then I can go in there, and these stick beautifully. Perfect. Problem solved. And also, just so you know, I worked in my basement for over a decade alone. One of the reasons I went back to school is because I want to be around people. So if you decide to work out of your home, and I know it's been COVID, but I did all that years ago. So I worked alone for a long time. And you have to be really self-motivated. And, you know, I listened to a lot of radio and music and TV and whatnot. I got headphones so I could talk to people on the phone, but I spent a lot of time by myself. And I still do, which I like. I probably do like it. All right, well, I'm running out of petals, which is great. I appreciate this, because that's what I wanted to happen. And then, let me find the rest. Oh, yes, I am running low. Thanks, you guys. Pour a drink in a large deli cup and answer a few more questions. Okay, I already have one. I probably shouldn't drink it because I think it has caffeine, but this is my matcha kombucha. Have you guys tried that one? It's like matcha with cream. David, she may need you to go over there and do it for her. LOL. I am very thirsty. In the kitchen, a lot of times we remind each other to take a drink because you do work and you forget and you get hyper fixated and then you get dehydrated. So, okay, we are running out of petals. You guys are the best. Yeah, I think that pink one looks pretty. All right, let's see. Running out, running out. Do. And then they can even go in the opposite direction as you kind of come to the end and create a little bit of a messy border, maybe. Every other way, different directions. Yeah, my favorite time was when I would sit down with the cake, was all ready to go, and I just had to put gum paste flowers in it. But sometimes I would have to do it at a club or a restaurant, and people would want to come chat, and I'd be like, oh, I need to focus. It was so hard for me because I didn't want to be rude, but I really needed to pay attention. All right. I think that might be it. Yep, these are all broken. Okay. And then I'm done. Well, I used up a lot of ingredients, so that's good. I'm going to show you the top. I never just throw ingredients away. I'm always looking at ways to just reuse them or finish them up. And sometimes it is just kind of playing and putting something together. I'm going to take this. I'm going to do just a little. This isn't going to look good. That does not look good. I want to cover up some of the unfinished portion. But this is going to throw the design out of balance, but there's really not a design, so. And normally I would put some around the bottom in 3 little spots. I wonder if I kept going. If I had a smaller star tip, I would do it a little bit smaller. This might be ruining it, but I'm just playing. want to throw away this buttercream. And I could smear it around with a little palette knife and play with it. All right, I'll show you what it looks like. So this is what it looks like. Okay, I think I ruined it. I don't have my stool. Not perfect. Does not look like the ones on my videos. However, you get the idea. So you can see I would just need a lot more petals to fill in all those spots. And I could have done a basket weave. That might have been a good thing. So I'm going to put it down lower. Oh, cakes are surprisingly heavy. So, I mean, it would be fun if you did not want to be super serious. And I would look at it like, where's the front? I would say that's kind of the front. Whichever one looks the best. And I swear it looks better in real life than this camera is picking up on all the middle parts. But your eye doesn't really. So yeah, that's it. Once you make all the petals, you can keep them in a little container for a long time. And you are good to go. Isn't that fun? Woo! I have had, there I am. I have had a intense day of sponge caking. I have sponge caked it up. Here's what I have to show for it. I have a cake behind me, which is great. Woo! That's it. That's my day. Not bad. I get to play with food. I used to make, people would say to me, you know, how do you even eat them? Because some of my cakes took me weeks and weeks to do, and they were very elaborate and very beautiful. And I would say, oh, I didn't mind it at all, and I didn't. But after 12 years, I was like, you know what? I have nothing to show for my work except photographs. So it is kind of nice to do. I do the sugar sculpture, which I have videos on, and it was really hard to figure out how to do the globes and the spheres out of pastillage. And that's really fun. I'd love to do some more, but I just keep getting busy with other stuff, so kind of fun. Well, it's so funny because I was supposed to just go till 8 and it's 8:43. I have had a blast. Do you guys have any more questions about baking? Because if you decide to make this between now and Sunday, I mean, if you don't have the trimoline, don't use anything. But if you can get the trimoline, then use it. But don't replace it. And if you know anyone who has a bake shop or that you could get just a little bit from, you don't need a lot. You saw how little it is. Is this a second kitchen in your house for your baking? No, because we don't own a house. We rent. We rent an apartment and it's right there. And on the same property, I rent this small apartment to work out of. So it's a residential kitchen, but it's dedicated to my work. I love that I can reference a video playback on YouTube. Thank you. Starry Dust, thank you for saying that, because it really is an extra step that I'm getting faster at, but I like it too, because it's a really good ready reference, and part 1 is like this night. It's the teaching, the talking, the explaining, and then on Sundays we just come back and kind of have fun. And so having it on YouTube makes it so nobody misses anything, which is great. The sponge cakes are going to give you a drier, lighter cake. A little bit tougher, whatever. That's why you add a syrup to it. In the United States, if you want to make a lot of people happy, you're going to make the high yield yellow cake. You're going to do a high yield butter cake, something with more fat and more sugar. That's just what we like. But if you are into light whipped cream, fresh berries, lemon cream and all that, a sponge cake is such a great backdrop. And this recipe is really good. You get a nice thick cake. It's stackable and light, but you really want to look for, if you're doing sponge cakes, you need to find recipes that are formulated for the other flavors. Because if you start experimenting, you're going to start finding that you have dryness issues or moisture issues, you know, like, so you're going to be recipe testing. So, you know, thanks for spending time with me, Eli. I appreciate, you know what, the fact that you guys all come here. We did it, Wilfredo, yay. I love it. I'm having a good time. Obviously, it's good to talk to all of you. You can eliminate the trimoline for this recipe. Do not substitute invert or glucose syrup, but you may not have as airy of a texture as mine because the trimoline helps you get those little air bubbles. It's not expensive, but it does come in a large bucket, but it does last a long time. You can, it's Nuvaline is the one I use. You can get it on Amazon. But if you can get it, get it. If not, there are other recipes that don't include it, but it does make a difference, but it's not the end of the world. Omit it, don't substitute it. So I'm really enjoying doing these lives. I'll be back on Sunday to maybe bring an ermine frosting, maybe play with this, maybe do another filling, or I was thinking I could do a roulade and show you how to roll it and maybe just play. So I need to think about some other sponge cakes. So if you have ideas, let me know. I wouldn't be doing this if you guys weren't here. And I am no longer overwhelmed by this. I love having one recipe because then when I begin to play, those become the other videos and then I have free time for my mind to wander and be creative. So thank you. Yeah, I'll think about doing a roulade, Sarah. That's it. I really think that'd be fun. I personally don't wrap it up in a towel like other people do, and I do have a really good recipe I've used many times, and I've done all my Bush Noels and things on it with it. So informative. I don't bake, but I like to watch. Well, thank you. You know what? I hope that at the very least, yeah, the ermine frosting would be good. You know, when you go to a restaurant and you don't know what's on the menu, like I hope that even if you don't bake, that you now know what a sponge cake is when they tell you something is, you know, a dacquoise or a jacquange. You're like, oh, a jacquange, a sponge. Like, you'll know what it is. Okay, I'll do the ermine or ermine or however you pronounce it. I always pronounce everything wrong. Thanks, all of you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I will see you on Sunday. I come here at noon Eastern Standard Time. Do part 2. Maybe I'll do a roulade. I'll do the ermine frosting. So if you guys have any ideas, let me know. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Dave works for an energy company. It's boring. But he is, we live near the water and he's in a boat or swimming in the water or hiking or doing fun stuff. So we really like to be outside. Dave, what do you do? He's my moderator. He's my #1 fan. And he's really smart. So he does smart people things with his brain. I just like to have a good time. So that's what I do. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night. Happy baking. Have a great rest of your week. I'll see you Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time, and we'll have a bunch of fun stuff to play with. And I won't fuss around as much so we can answer more questions. So bring all your questions about buttercream and whatever else. All righty? Take care. Thank you. Good night.